In the mid-1960s, the town of Point Pleasant, Virginia was besieged by a year-long series of sightings of a strange winged creature which culminated in the deaths of 46 people. The creature was the size of a man with glowing red eyes and huge bat wings, and filled those unfortunate enough to see him with a sense of bottomless dread. The collapse of the Silver Bridge was considered a tragic narrative end to the story. The reality is, the sightings of the winged creature known as Mothman carry on to this day. This is Marc W. Shako's Weird World, and this is the story of Mothman. Let's get weird.
The history of mankind is riddled with the weird and the wonderful. Bizarre people, strange places, and odd events. For centuries, we've told each other fantastic stories around campfires and in darkened rooms. Tales of ghosts, UFOs, and conspiracies. But are these stories exactly that? Stories? There's only one way to find out. Dive into the rabbit hole and enter Marc W. Shako's Weird World.
Hello and welcome to episode 1 of Weird World, and today's episode is all about a story that started in 1966 in one of the strangest ways possible. The strangeness continued for an entire year, and some think that's where the story ended. The truth is, new chapters are still being written to this day. This is the story of the mysterious Mothman. Just before we get into it, just for a bit of fun, where are you on the existence of a Mothman? 0%? 50%? Put a percentage on it and we'll look at that later to see if it's changed. Anyway, let's get weird. On one cold November evening in 1966 in the small town of Point Pleasant, Virginia, local man Woody Derenberger was driving home when he saw what he could only describe as a large grey object blocking the road. He pulled his car to a halt and watched in amazement as a figure emerged from said object and strode towards him. The figure introduced himself as a searcher and comforted Derenberger, telling him not to be afraid. He told Woody his name was Indrid Cold and declared that he would return, before climbing back aboard his strange craft, which promptly rose up into the night and out of sight. Woody raced home and told his wife before promptly calling the police and the press. For Woody, this was a story he could tell for the rest of his life, but for the town of Point Pleasant, this was just the tip of an extremely weird iceberg. Today in 2024, the population of Point Pleasant is a little over 4,000. Back in the times of our story, it was around 6,000, but despite its low population count, it is classified as a city, though many sites online list it as a town. However you classify it, back in the 1960s, Point Pleasant was shaken to its core. A few weeks after Derenberger's run-in with the man from the strange craft, two young couples head to a disused World War II munitions plant for a little fun. They were in for an evening they would never forget. The fun was interrupted when, through the darkness, they saw something, or rather, something saw them. Staring back at them from the doorway of the factory was a pair of glowing red eyes. There was a man, 6 or 7 feet tall, with big wings folded against his back. The youths were filled with an existential dread. The fun was over, and they beat a hasty retreat. The problem was, their new red-eyed friend followed. Not on foot, by air. According to the youngsters, their assailant had a 10-foot wingspan. They were speeding away, and the figure first appeared on a hillside and then tracking their car while they were doing 100 miles per hour. And so began the myth of the Mothman. What the kids didn't know is, 3 days before their sighting, a group of grave diggers had their own encounter. 5 men were digging a grave for a funeral the next day, when a brown human being took off from trees and flew over their heads. They described it as not a bird but a man with wings. Before the group of kids fleeing the munitions factory have told their story, on the same night a man living near woods just outside Point Pleasant has his own encounter. At around 10:30, Merle Partridge was watching television when suddenly the picture turned to a snowy static. More odd was the high-pitched sound he heard outside. He compared the rising volume to a generator starting up, and the strange sound was coming from his roof. He grabbed a torch, took his German Shepherd, Bandit, and went to investigate. As soon as they got outside, Bandit started barking and growling before running off into the darkness. When Mill catches up with the dog, he's staring at the old hay barn. On the roof is a pair of glowing red eyes. Fear and dread overtakes him and he runs back into the house for his rifle. The problem is he's so overcome with terror, he's too afraid to go back outside. He never saw his dog Bandit again. He reported this to the sheriff, half expecting to be laughed out of the station. The sheriff, of course, by this time has now heard 3 such stories. Far from laughing off the reports, he calls a press conference convinced the character of the people reporting the stories are beyond credible. The witnesses didn't have time to coordinate their accounts. Something bizarre has come to town. On the night of the press conference, a woman was going out with her baby when she saw a creature bigger than a man. The terror was so overwhelming she dropped the child. Instinct kicked in and she fell to the floor to protect the infant before grabbing him and racing back inside. Word of the conference spread. The town is flooded with ufologists and paranormal investigators, and the sightings only increase. One of the investigators is John Keel. He spends the best part of a year interviewing hundreds of witnesses trying to sort the credible from the attention seekers. From the interviews he's able to get a common description. Around 6 feet tall, far wider than a man, walking with a strange gait. When it flew, the bat-like wings were used for gliding rather than flapping, and it could rise straight up into the air. The flying came with an odd humming sound, and its screech sounded like a woman screaming. Keel and the paranormal investigators weren't the only ones drawn to Point Pleasant. Other strangeness included lights in the sky, an increase in poltergeist activity, and out-of-place men in black suits who were also interested in interviewing witnesses. This strangeness went on for a full year before coming to an abrupt end when Point Pleasant was struck by tragedy. On the 15th of December 1967, amid heavy rush hour traffic, Point Pleasant's Silver Bridge collapsed, plunging cars into the icy waters below. 46 died. 2 of the victims of the tragedy were never found. For many, that's the place where the story of the Mothman ends. But there are rumours that sightings of the Mothman preceded other tragedies. In the mid-80s, a black-winged creature was sighted in the town of Pripyat, Ukraine. According to the stories, those who saw him were plagued by nightmares and besieged by threatening phone calls. It was shortly after these sightings that reactor number 4 at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant plunged the world into the worst recorded nuclear disaster. Other accounts mention the sighting of Mothman at another bridge collapse in Minnesota, a swine flu outbreak in Mexico, and almost inevitably in New York City on the morning of the 11th of September 2001. One account came from Freiburg, Germany. This was on the 10th of September 1978. A group of miners were heading to work, and they came upon what they thought was a headless creature with glowing red eyes on its chest, which was another common Mothman description. The thing was blocking the entrance to the mine, and at first the miners thought it was a man in a trench coat. Any such notions were immediately quashed when the creature unfurled a large pair of black wings. The men froze in the mine entrance stunned, staring fearfully at the creature. It let out a blood-curdling screech that scattered the miners and had them fleeing for safety. Around an hour later, The ground started to rumble and shake, and a thick plume of dust ejected from the mine entrance. The mine had collapsed. Had the miners gone into the mine as normal, many of them would have failed to make it back out. The thing they dubbed the Freiburg Shrieker had saved their lives. Fast forward to 2006, and a Cherokee man and his son are driving down an isolated stretch of road some 1,000 miles northwest of Point Pleasant at night when he claims Mothman attacked their car. He said the creature flew alongside them and then directly in front of their windshield, close enough to touch. The man and his son got a good look at the creature, describing it as bat-like and fleshy with sparse hair and red eyes the size of road reflectors. He also described the now familiar high-pitched screech and said that the sound gave him vertigo. The man had to pull over so his son could throw up. Chicago's O'Hare International Airport and the area surrounding Lake Michigan has been something of a hotspot for Mothman sightings in recent years. Wisconsin too, where the man and his son had their run-in, seems more than a one-off. These sightings actually happen right up to present day, but the first recorded encounter actually predates the original Point Pleasant flap, pun intended, by 9 years. This is from a collection of sightings catalogued by Emily and Tobias Wayland at singular4tn.com, and I will put that link in the show notes. A man by the name of Gerald Therese reported seeing something strange while out hunting in Braidwood, Illinois, sometime in the early winter of 1957. The encounter goes as follows. I realise this story is a little late, but I never knew who to tell my story to until I came across your article about the man who saw a birdman at O'Hare Airport. I'm 79 years old now, and this happened a long time ago. It was around 1957 when I was with my late brother Gene and his late brother-in-law. We were hunting in the Braidwood, Illinois area for pheasants and rabbits. As we were walking in this large open field, there was a lone, large tree standing in the middle of the field. When we were directly under it, a huge man-sized creature sailed over our heads into the woods across the road. We were stunned and just looked at each other, too dumbfounded to speak. I was a young teenager at the time, and it was early winter time. The winged creature had the body of a large man with legs, but it was covered over the whole body with dark tan-coloured feathers. This happened so long ago I don't recall what the face looked like. I'm just glad to tell this story to someone who has a knowledge of such creatures before I die. I'll read this next encounter from the Singular Fortean page verbatim. I'm going to tell you about something that happened to me on June 29, 2017 in Chicago, Illinois. I am reporting this of my own volition, and I am wanting to stay anonymous due to the fact that I work for the Chicago Police Department and do not want anybody else to know that I submitted this report. I have been with the Chicago Police Department for over 8.5 years. The only people who know I submitted this are my wife, my son who encouraged me to submit this, and my partner who was also witness to this incident. I want you to know that I am of sound mind and health and don't want any publicity other than just reporting this incident. I also want you to know that I am not prone to fits of fantasy or hoaxing anything that I've seen, especially while I am on duty. On the night of June 29, 2017 at approximately 11:15 p.m, my partner and I were on routine patrol and approaching the intersection of West 81st and South Throop in the Auburn Gresham neighborhood of Chicago, Illinois. We were flagged down by a group of people who were pointing up to the top of the apartment building that was on the corner. We pulled over and they immediately started telling us to look up at the building. Many of the people were frightened and were very excited about seeing what they had seen. My partner and I look and see a large creature that was approximately 6 to 6.5 feet tall and was very thin. If it had been a human, it would have been emaciated. This thing was standing on top of the building and had what looked like a pair of very large wings that extended out to at least 8 to 10 feet from tip to tip. No discernible features, it just looked like a dark black shadow with wings. My partner and I both thought it was somebody trying to jump from the building and maybe wearing a costume of some kind. When we both shined our flashlights to try and get a better look at what we were dealing with, this thing took off into the air and flew away. As this creature flew away, headed in the southern direction, something sounding like a scream came from it, and within the matter of about 5 seconds, this creature was gone into the night. The people who initially flagged us down had said that many people in the neighbourhood had seen this thing for the previous 2 nights, and this just happened to be the only time it was seen in a stationary place. We stood there stunned as this thing flew away and disappeared into the night. We stood there and talked to the group of people who flagged us down, taking information down and any information regarding previous sightings from the nights before. We were initially doubtful about filing a report because we thought we would be made fun of for seeing little green men. We finally filed a report as we did not want to violate protocol. Nothing was ever said about the report being filed, and as of right now, it's been business as usual. We wanted to file this report because after I told my son the story, he went online and showed me that this is not the only sighting of something similar being seen in the city. I showed my partner the day after the sightings, and he said that he didn't want to be involved, and as far as he was concerned, it was nothing more than a large owl or a big bird that was misidentified. My son was the one who encouraged me to file this and do it anonymously to protect my identity. I know what I saw was real, and even though I have no explanation as to what it truly is, I know that what I saw was flesh and blood. I'm a Christian man who believes that there are things that come from other planes and stalk the people of this earth, and that only one's faith is what protects us from these things. I know that my faith is strong, and therefore I am protected, and I hope that I never see this thing again. Thank you very much for your time and have a blessed day.
To date, no one has been able to locate a police report to corroborate this sighting. This is the 21st sighting to be reported in Chicago so far in 2017. All of the sightings have taken place in the lakefront area within a few miles of Lake Michigan. The sightings generally take place in the evening or at night, often in or near a park, and witnesses consistently describe a large bat or bird-like creature with humanoid features. So far, no pictures or video have been forthcoming. There are literally dozens of accounts like this, the list goes on and on. Another good example is of a sighting with multiple witnesses near the Adler Planetarium. One of the reasons I like this one is a second report came in later to corroborate the sighting, so here are those again from Singular 40 and verbatim.
I want to tell you about a sighting that happened on Friday the 23rd of June at about 9:30 p.m. by the Adler Planetarium in Chicago, Illinois. My girlfriend and I are spending the weekend in Chicago when we took a walk around the Adler and Shed Aquarium so she could try to get some more Pokemon. We were spending our anniversary together downtown and wanted to visit the museum campus. We were at the back side of the Adler Planetarium and we had walked along the path toward the food court. We ordered some food and sat down when there was a commotion and a bunch of people were shouting and pointing at the sky. We both got up and went to look at what was going on and saw a large, black, bat-like creature headed away from us. When we asked people what they had seen, we were told that they had seen a large bat. Everyone described it as a large bat-like creature that also had human-like features. What we saw was flying away from us but supported what everyone else has seen as looking like a large bat. We hung around for around 30 minutes after that, looking up at the sky, as was everybody else. No one saw or heard anything for the remainder of time that we were there. There was a feeling of uneasiness among the people who were there, and many shortly departed right before we did.
Then the corroborating account goes like this.
Good afternoon, I wanted to write in and report a sighting that happened to me and my 2 friends a week ago along the lake shore of Chicago. We decided to report this after reading your blog about a similar sighting that happened on the same night as ours. The events that I'm writing about happened on Friday the 23rd of June 2017 at approximately 10 p.m.
I was with a group of friends at the Adler Planetarium just hanging out and having fun down by the concession area. We usually hang out at the lakeside because it's fun and you get to meet a lot of girls. This particular night we were hanging out at our usual table near the taco stand when we saw what had to be the biggest bat we have ever seen. This bat must have been at least 7 feet tall if he was standing up, but again, my perception might be skewed because it was dark and this thing was about 20 feet up in the air. All three of us were like, "What the fuck is that?" We all saw it about the same time as it flew over and continued toward the area of Soldier Field. It did this for maybe 20 yards or so, then abruptly changed directions and headed toward the lake and flew out over the lake and out of sight. This thing made no noise and was easily seen by myself and at least a few other people. We were so preoccupied with looking at this flying thing that none of us thought about grabbing our phones and snapping pictures, which I regret, because I could have posted this on YouTube or Snapchat and made $1 million. My friend sent me an email with a link about a similar sighting in the same general area on the same night we had ours. That is why I'm writing to report our sighting that we had that night. I am more than willing to talk about the sighting as long as my name is not used and my friends who were with me that night are too. Thank you for taking my report and not thinking I am crazy because of what we saw. The one thing that does not fit in with the similar sighting that I saw on your site, as there was no feeling of dread or despair, but an overwhelming urge to keep looking at the creature. But that could have also been morbid curiosity.
For more spooky strangeness, visit www.markwshako.com. And now, back to the episode.
The list that Emily and Tobias have compiled over at Singular 14 is long. I will put a link in the description for this episode. Some of the more credible sightings from that list include an airline pilot who reported a large black human-like creature flying over Chicago International Airport. A man claimed that he and 2 co-workers saw 3 black red-eyed winged creatures while working near a hangar at O'Hare International Airport. Retired police officer David Ramos reports an encounter with a shadowy winged humanoid he had when he was 12 years old near the North Branch of the Chicago River. A woman along with her husband and a girlfriend reported a flying red-eyed gargoyle, which is another common description, in Rockford, Illinois. A witness and 2 friends report a man with wings flying over the Kinnick River in Milwaukee. A suspicious winged entity is captured on camera. 2 roommates and their friends are reportedly terrorized by glowing eyes peeking through their window, and a college student reports a man with wings. A fire and rescue officer and his partner report a green-eyed winged humanoid in downtown Milwaukee, Wisconsin. A family walking along the riverfront reportedly sees a flying humanoid cross over the William P. Fahey Bridge. 2 different couples report encounters with a large bat-like flying humanoid in the Lincoln Park area. A retired police officer reports a dark gargoyle with red eyes in the Forest Park neighborhood. A family on their way home from Mass reports a red-eyed winged goblin that gave off a strong sense of evil. 3 witnesses report a tall man with a very large pair of black wings and glowing ruby red eyes in Oak Park. A security guard at Chicago's O'Hare International Airport reports a very tall, solid black creature with glowing red eyes, and on, and on, and on. So, there you have it, the Mothman. Where are you now? Did your percentage go up? Did it go down? Let me know. Have a look at that list for yourself and dive deeper into the detailed accounts. Are all these people cranks? Mistaken? Was the whole town of Point Pleasant gripped by hysteria? But then, how does that explain the individual reports before anybody knew that the Mothman was even a thing? Maybe, just maybe, the Mothman is real. Thanks for listening. Keep it weird.
The intro music is Slasher by Carl Casey at Whitebat Audio, check out his YouTube channel. The outro music is Lone Wolf by Guillaume Bernard. Please remember to like, subscribe, rate, review and share this episode wherever you may have heard it. And you can find me on Facebook and X as Marc W. Shako. For more information on my books and all things podcasty, visit www.marcwshako.com. Thanks for listening.